There was a terrible drought in the land. Finally, in desperation, the townsfolk sent for a rainmaker. The rainmaker asked the townfolk to leave her alone and to keep silent. The first day, nobody was quiet. Maybe some of them whispered some of the time, but basically they went about business as usual. The rainmaker came to them late in the day and repeated the fact that she needed complete silence. So the next day, the townsfolk did try a little harder. They all carried pads of paper around with them and wrote their thoughts and ideas and jokes and complaints out and tried to get others to read them. And they started using a lot of spontaneous sign language too. That evening, the rainmaker smiled. The next day, the townsfolk were a little bit bored with all that writing and reading. If they had had computers or iPads or smartphones, they could have kept up their communicating a lot longer, but all they had was paper, and this, it was the olden days. So on the third day, most of the townspeople actually started being quiet. That evening, the rainmaker smiled. The next day, the townspeople got out of bed with a feeling of peace that seemed to well up from inside their bodies. The silence began to pervade their minds. The rainmaker stood up and stretched, laughing quietly in delight. The next day, the silence in that village full of humans was profound. Not a single person was worrying. Not a single person was angry. Not a single person was pitying themselves. The sky deepened its blue. The people gazed at the beautiful color. A breeze stirred in the dried up trees. The people smiled at the feeling of the breeze on their skin. Soon a huge thundercloud came into view, and the people stood up in awesome wonder. The rain began gently falling, and it continued all day and all night, and the earth drank deeply. And the people danced for joy, and the rainmaker smiled as she went back home.
We're going to reaffirm the Faithful Path Covenant that we all put together at our very first session. Please read along with me. As the Walker Faith Community, we fearlessly promise to include all opinions. We affirm actively. Do you have the agenda in front of you? It's printed in the agenda. It's printed right in the agenda. We made it as so easy for everybody to do it. Do you all have agendas? We have extra. There are extra agendas here on the piano. We're gonna start from the beginning. Yeah, we killed a couple of trees to make sure everybody could follow along, but not many. We were pretty careful with that. So everybody got one now? Okay, we'll start one more time. As the Walker Faith Community, we fearlessly promise to include all opinions, and we affirm active listening. It is okay to disagree, but not interrupt. We encourage speaking for yourself, awareness of others, and the vulnerability that entails. With active listening, we will strive for clarity, fun, love, and kindness. The Walker Faith Community is open to change as we work together toward the next chapter in our shared journey. What I'd like to first do is take a look at report on session 3, leadership options. Now, these have been emailed out. We have printed them for you, but I thought it was important to go over what we did last week on the 11th. Do you have a copy? Okay, there's extras around, so be sure you have these things. Thank you. A person who couldn't stay told me to share with you that whatever decisions are made, he completely trusts this community to make wise and good choices, even if he wasn't here, which I thought was a very positive message, actually. And I said I would be delighted to share that with you. Okay, report on session 3, and we'll just kind of go through this. You can look at it, and if you have questions, when I'm done with it, ask the questions, and I'll respond. And if somebody else could respond better, I'd be glad to have them do that too. There were 19 people in the sanctuary and 8 on Zoom for a total of 27. The opening music was by Janet Skidmore, accompanied by Mary Parker on the drums. Nancy Larson provided a thoughtful reflection. The gathered reaffirmed the faithful path covenant created at the first session, and it will be repeated at each gathering. The session 2 recap was shared. Paper copies of the gathering and earlier report was emailed to the congregation. We're doing everything we know how to be very transparent, straightforward, to share information. None of this is hidden. It's important that everybody feel good about what we're doing, and if you have questions, that's certainly appropriate to respond. I don't see our flip chart that we've had in the past meetings. It didn't migrate out here because we'll probably need it for a little bit later. So if the flip chart is available, that would be a wonderful thing to have. Time was spent reviewing the 3 options for Walker leadership: credentialed clergy, intentional interim clergy, and lay leadership, 1, 2, and 3. There was discussion and questions, and before we adjourn to our tables to have small group discussions. And we'll be doing that every time we gather. We'll have small table talk. During the report back time, there was discussion about various options. The following special points were recorded on a flip chart by Mary Parker. Thank you to Mary, having good handwriting. I took pictures of it and was able to transcribe it. That's how I got these. Concern about debt. One of the quotes was, "Congregation needs to accept responsibility." Second was credentialed clergy, safer recruitment. Third was lay leadership. Congregation is creative to do our own thing. The third one was a concern, will there be enough people who will step up to do the work, to help? That was the idea. Credentialed pastor will understand the job better. Need building manager, so interim pastor makes sense. Interim is trained to help us process. Still have lots of questions, which is certainly appropriate. I thought those were very good comments that people made. We did our ranked choice voting for ballot 2, and we handed out, and the ballots were taken in person and online. You also, just so you know, you have a copy of this ranked choice ballot 2. Again, not everybody needs their own unless you want it. We've sent it out. So this is what happened. There were 25 total votes on the first round. Credentialed clergy got 7, interim clergy got 12, and lay leadership got 6. Having finished last during the second round, the lay leadership was dropped, and their second choice votes were redistributed. 5 of those votes, that's how the rank works. 5 of those votes, it's okay. No, don't even worry about it. We'll solve it. It's sort of typical of what happens. You know, things fall.
Everything put together.
5 of these votes went to interim clergy, and there was 1 exhausted ballot. Final vote: interim clergy 17, credentialed clergy 7. And then there's a copy of the ballot that was sent out as a PDF. And so as you see, you can look at that, and that shows you how it works. Henry was very helpful in making sure we did the process well, and then we sort of did it, and then we audited what we did, so we're making sure. Just so you know, these votes are not locked in. They're not, it doesn't mean that's the only thing that can happen, but it gives you a sense of where people are in this particular process. And when the charge conference takes place, which will be on Sunday, the 11th of September, a church conference, I should say, not a charge conference. It's a church conference, which means it's open to all church members. When that takes place, then things will be, a plan will be pulled together and finalized for that. Any questions about this? Now, I'll be glad to respond if I can, or somebody else can too, who is part of the whole process. Is there anybody online with a question? Nobody online with a question? Yep, and so there was a question over here, so I'll bring the microphone over.
Does anybody remember what was meant by credential?
The mic might be turned off.
Okay.
Is this better? Okay.
Oh, my.
Does anybody remember what was meant by credentialed clergy safer recruitment? What did we mean by that?
The only thing the person didn't tell me what they meant, but basically, when you're credentialed clergy in our United Methodist Church, you have to go through a process to be credentialed, whether it be as an ordained person or as a lay person. And then you have to go through boundaries workshops, and you have to be sure that you have gone through all the stuff that has to do with keeping people safe, and there's background checks that are done. I mean, that's part of what happens, and I think that's probably, I'm guessing that's probably what is entailed by that. I don't have a firm answer because I didn't have that.
And then could you tell what the difference between that and an interim clergy is? Because they're credentialed as well, but in a different way, or?
Well,
Can you repeat that question? Could you repeat it, or?
actually, I'll let you ask the question again. I think that way people know who's asking it too.
Yeah, just what the difference between credentialed and interim clergy is.
So there are some United Methodist clergy that have been trained in interim work. The idea, though, as I think some people look at it, the first choice, credentialed clergy, would be somebody who would be here, and appointed here and would be staying here. The interim clergy could be a situation where it would be a year or 2 or 18 months or whatever, depending on what gets pulled together. And so they're virtually the same, but one is more of an intentional interim. You're saying this is not a person that's going to be here for 10 years. I mean, I think that's the idea. That's how I understand it.
So they have credentials.
Absolutely, yes. Oh, yes.
Am I correct in assuming that either the long-term pastor or the interim pastor could be United Methodist, but they could also have the denominations?
The question was about could they be from other denominations? Yes, they could be from other denominations. The United Methodist Church is appointing UCC pastors, Lutheran pastors, Baptists, all kinds of different people that can work appropriately. So that yes, it could be, absolutely. Yeah, good question. And there's a huge shortage of clergy. It's tilted. This floor is so straight. If it was an old building, we could have put a tilted place. Thank you for getting that to work. And we have pens or something? Well, on for those later. Okay. Any further questions on this particular piece? Yes. Okay.
Do either of the first two options leave room for including lay persons.
Of course. The only reason that churches continue and exist are because of lay people. Would it be a paid position? That would be something that would have to be determined. But yes, of course. Basically, in the life of the church, there are people who are professionals, who are trained, who are ordained, who do and then there are lay people. Now, some of the lay people may be as gifted or even more gifted than the. Thank you so much for getting the pants. So yes, of course there would be lay people, and lots of churches hire, for instance, you don't need to do this in this church because you've got such great music, but lots of churches hire musicians. We don't need to do that. You've got them. I mean, you've got them. It's just amazing. I mean, this morning was an example of that. So that is a position that doesn't have to be paid, but sometimes there might be an office manager. It depends on what structure ends up happening. Yes, a question online? Yeah, I'll bring it back.
I thought you were going to say something.
You're finally getting the link.
All right, Mary, we'll see how this works. You can go ahead and start speaking. I'll hold the mic up to the laptop.
Okay, my understanding is that credentialed clergy, as David said, has gone through a lot of process and training. Some qualified lay leaders, speakers have also gone through training to the congregation. The interim minister, like David said, is for a shorter period of time, has been trained to help a congregation go through a tight transitional process. Could be implementing whatever we come up with our faithful inquiry, versus a person who's a generally qualified pastor, but may not be equipped to really handle tight changes.
And then there's one other question on Zoom. But
Well, I think, let me respond. So, yes, that's the same point you brought up when we were together, and we recorded that, and it was put in there. However, you can also have an interim that is not somebody who's trained professionally as an interim, but the time frame and the scope would be determined ahead of time. So that would be another one of those possibilities. There aren't trained clergy to come in and do that at our Minnesota Annual Conference. There's been a few people that have had some stuff, but I don't believe they're available. So I think the idea when we sort of changed this from a licensed local pastor, which there are none that are qualified to come and to be here, we decided we wanted to have a regular appointment, an interim appointment, or a lay appointment, and those were the sort of the three categories we came up with. And so, the strong feeling was that we better aim towards interim stuff, and so that's how it came out. And the second question.
Something I couldn't figure out.
Right.
all right, and then the second question, this is from Bonita, asks, would pagan clergy be welcomed also?
Would pagan clergy be welcomed? I don't know how to answer that, because if they've gone through the United Methodist Church stuff and are approved by them, then that would probably be a possibility. I lived in England and did some pretty deep study on Celtic pre-Christian traditions. And we have people in our Minnesota Annual Conference that are very open to all sorts of things, but they would have to be approved to be able to be here.
That's everyone's
on Zoom?
Do you have a mic? Here, let me give you the microphone so you can announce who's zooming in with us.
All right, just reading out who's on Zoom right now. We've got Bonita, we've got KC, we have Mary Buckley, and Diane, and we have Paul McHugh. And then, Bonita, do you want to clarify further? I don't know if there's just a chat message, but you can feel free to unmute and speak if you'd like.
Sorry, I'm trying to get muted here. The folks I'm referring to are credentialed by the state and by their traditions, legally. But I don't know of any that have gone to the Methodist council for approval yet.
All right.
Thank you, Benita. Appreciate that. There's one more question, then we're going to move. Then we're going to move forward because we've got other things we need to accomplish. Here you go.
So, Benita's question, if we can have lay leadership as part of the interim, then it would make sense that could be a pagan person. Doesn't that make sense?
The decision was to have interim clergy that are ordained. That was the decision, and second was to have ordained clergy. So the lay leadership dropped out of that because there weren't enough votes to support it. There were 6. You have the ballot in front of you. So the ballot shows that there were 6 who voted for lay leadership, and as a result, with ranked choice voting, that disappears, and their second choices, 5 of them were for interim, went to interim. So that's why interim jumped way ahead and won, and the second was clergy. Now, it could be completely different when you have the church conference, but this is giving a sense of where the congregation is and how they're feeling about it. Yes?
Can I just say something for clarity? And that is that lay leadership, if we have a credentialed Methodist minister in here, that person, as opposed to hiring somebody to be a lay leader and do the ministerial stuff. That doesn't mean, a lay leader, we always have lay leaders in here. Whatever denomination that comes in here, and obviously we've always had pagan ceremonies and pagans doing stuff, and a variety of people doing stuff. That isn't going to change. I think there's confusion about the term lay leader.
Well, actually, your one board, every person who serves on your one board, they're lay leaders. They have they're involved in lay leadership. So that's it's not a paid position, and we don't pay lay people who are volunteering to do the ministry and the mission of the church, but the church wouldn't exist without them. There's another question over here.
This did get touched upon this past meeting this past week about the ranked choice voting and how hard and fast that was told it was going to be for us. And my understanding, or what I remember was told to us, is that we are going to use ranked choice voting in a informal way, not as like one category. In this particular case, the lay leadership was kind of overtaken by the interim minister by one vote, and therefore is dropping out entirely. And I think that that's something to point out, that what I believe we were told is that the ranked choice was kind of a general format, but I did not understand it to be an absolute, and especially in such a close instance like this. And I think therefore we shouldn't just be like, that's over, done. We can only talk about number 1 and 2 now.
As I said before, and I'll say again, this is only a straw poll to see where people feel and what people would like to do. And it is right. And I was also asked to be sure, and which we did, to make sure that people knew how many votes went around for the first time. Those people that voted for lay were the ones that gave the interim piece 5 more votes, and that's what made it very clearly the choice, because the people that voted for lay, their second choice was interim ministry. So they didn't lose their power. That's the great thing about ranked choice voting. As somebody who's been elected 3 times with it actually works. Okay, I think we've spent enough going over all of the Section 3 recap. Any last questions? Because I would like us to just go back and revisit. We've already talked about the votes that we had. In the first RCV, the first ranked choice voting, had to do with deciding whether we were going to remain a United Methodist Church or whether we were going to become a fellowship. And that was a straight out vote. It didn't go to ranked choice because we needed just about 16 votes, and 17 went to remain a United Methodist Church and 13 for fellowship. However, what that means is there's a lot of desire in the congregation to become a fellowship as opposed to a regular United Methodist Church. And that could be part of the transition, as over the course of the next year or year and a half or 2, that the church moves itself from being a formal United Methodist Church into becoming a fellowship. And that's certainly very reasonable. And that's sort of what I sort of took away from this, but sort of stay where we are now, and then let's look how we're going to move into the future. Now, I'm just giving it what it felt like to me as somebody who's, and I can't have an opinion on this, by the way, because it's your choice and your decisions, not mine. I'm here to help facilitate and help make some sense out of this. The interim clergy looks like a strong piece, and I mean, there were 7 votes for, or 6 votes, I should say, for lay leadership. So that we recorded, and the information is there as promised. Now we have a handout where we want people to take a few minutes and fill out this handout. Yes. Yeah, I'll bring the microphone over here. We've got a handout for you others can start on it if you want. Yes, sir.
So the big objection, or at least obstacle, as far as becoming a fellowship, meaning I identify with 13 to 17, the amount of interest in becoming a 7. However, for as long as I've been here for the last 22 years, after the church burned down, we were in dire straits in a lot of respects. And of course, we had insurance and things. And most of all of the expenses that it took to build this facility as it is were absorbed, and then other people had to step in. And so we do have a financial responsibility hanging over that, influencing that decision. So in one respect, we actually only have one choice, to stay affiliated, so we can control the building, in as much as to even sell it to the burden, to suffice the burden of our debts, our financial responsibilities. But that's the only thing right now. So if, I don't know how we could switch this around to a more financial thing, if this is the proper time in looking at that. I don't see it as a choice, but yet there is a serious interest in it. So other than, at some point being able to satisfy our debt and square things away without abusing relationships and creating a lot of hard feelings, down the line. So don't miss Wednesday's meeting, where we're going to be talking about the building and the options about the building.
We're going to be handing out, when you leave, just at the very end, we're going to be handing out the 4 options and another proposal that'll be before the community. So the decision about, that you bring up, that's not yet. We're not there yet. Now, this discernment piece, just a second, this discernment piece, written feedback and talkback, I want you to spend time starting to write on this, and I'll keep answering questions, but there's 4 things we've asked here. One is, what has been helpful about this discernment process? 2, what are your suggestions to improve the process? See, we're in continuous quality improvement. We're always trying to make things better. What have you learned about your faith community in this whole process? And what other questions or thoughts do you have? And take a few minutes and fill it out. Now, you had a question.
Yeah, I think you answered my question, because I was going to ask about this feedback form, if that involves what we already discussed, or is it future things too? In other words, the previous meetings.
You can record whatever is significant to you about what's been helpful so far, how do you like it improved, what you've learned about your faith community, because there were some very interesting things that came out of that very first survey about what was most important about the church, and then what other questions do you have? Okay. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. I'll come around, and then when you fill it out, then I would like you to, once you've done that at your table, have some conversation at your table, please.
Okay, I finished my form.
Couple more minutes, okay? And then once everybody at your table is done, why don't you just talk amongst yourselves for a few minutes, do a little table talk, and then we'll get a report.
Everybody ready?
Is everybody unmuted that wants to talk? Because I'm not hearing you.
Okay,
Okay.
I was talking to you, but I was not unmuted at that moment.
Okay. I just was hearing silence and I wasn't sure if everybody was ready. Okay.
I only filled out one thing because doing the technology here has been hard enough to process.
I was, one of the things that I was hoping for was some way to still comment or add to the vote for, like, I was out of town this week and it was not possible to make it to the Thursday meeting, but I would have liked to have had some input too.
Well, yeah.
So there you go.
Mm-hmm. What would you have inputted?
I would have voted for like a 50-50 between an interim and I would have voted for a part-time interim and the rest to be filled in by lay leadership.
Mm-hmm. I think that is entirely probable what we'll come up with. Because we didn't really say how many hours we wanted a lay leader or an interim leader. Because, you know, it didn't give us a choice to, well, we could have, it just was this or that and not refining how many hours. So I think what you have suggested probably, or very well may be what happens.
It's been in our tradition so far, so.
Well, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, we're paying Mary part-time work. She may or may not want to do it. Or we may or may not want, I mean, we might want someone to do something else to pick up that typical clergy package.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you see me hiding behind Diane?
The one waving is Diane.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Casey.
Are you in the same room, Mary? I mean, Diane?
Yeah.
I'm sitting right behind her
Yeah.
in the bed. Well, she's in the bed. I'm in a chair.
Oh, now
I see you both. Here we go.
There she is. Sorry, I have to leave in a couple minutes, but it's been nice to.
Well, I kind of did that too. I was going, and all of a sudden all my energy drained. So
Well, and I don't
Yes,
know
I
when you
can lie
guys
down.
started. Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, you guys started without me because I was busy saying goodbye. This has been several days of house party and some people are leaving and I have to run and exchange hugs and then come back. So I'm back. I don't know what you all have said in this break.
Casey, really quickly, I just said I wanted some way, like I was out of town this last week, and I just wanted some way to still have my thoughts and vote recorded for what I meant.
Good.
But you missed it, but it's not all done yet.
Oh, right. It's nothing is fixed in stone ever. As close as we get to some kind of a firm decision is going to be September 11th. All of this is just a structured way for us to hear each other.
Right.
The only other thing I said, Casey, was that I was hoping for some combination of interim combined with lay leadership.
Fine. All things are still possible. That's my thought.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
On a slightly different note, Casey, if you would be so kind as to give your kids hugs for me, I would appreciate it.
Well, she's not with her kids right
I'm in
now.
California.
Well, you could still, are they with you?
No, I'm here with my high school buddy, the people I visit in January and February said, why don't you come out in the summer? And they were having a 50th anniversary party for their house.
Oh,
So
God.
we had 50 people here yesterday. I helped with the prep. I'm going to help with the cleanup. Nancy, my friends' kids and grandkids are here. Very fun.
Okay, okay.
Cool.
Cancel.
So the first question on this discussion forum, basically, what have you seen that's been worthwhile in this process? I think it just gets us starting on moving forward. And it helps us process all these messy questions, gain common perspective. I mean, I think many times our names for certain things get confused, or what categories we're talking about. So this is helping us get on the same page as close as we can.
Okay.
So I think that's good.
Yep.
How would I do this differently, or what would I recommend? I would have recommended that up front, David be clear that we aren't basing our choices on realities like financial analysis or resource analysis, but more on what we would like to see, what we would prefer to happen. He's trying to have us do that first, and then we do financial analysis
To see what can realistically
happen.
happen.
But not start with a sense of scarcity.
Right.
So he could have been clearer.
I'm not sure he knew how fixed we were going to be on finances. I mean, he knew I was, and he told me that, and it helped me a lot to move on. But I don't think he understood that all the rest of us were also used to looking at deficits and talking about finances.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that could have been clear. I agree with you. Because that's been on everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Well, speaking
right.
speaking of the elephant, I also just don't want us to lose track of the fact that we owe Christine money.
That's the point that
Yeah.
everyone's been focusing on.
Yeah.
And David's not, the purpose right now is not the who owes money issue. The purpose is looking at what we would prefer in the future.
Right.
And then we'll see if we can. There was an interesting question. What have we learned, or do we have a new takeaway on our congregation? But I don't know how it was phrased. I don't have the piece of paper in front of me. I'd have to flip my screen and get all lost again.
I think what's been good, and again, this goes to your point, Mary, is I liked seeing the different options, and we haven't been focusing enough on what our options are. And I liked hearing, I like seeing New City put input in too as well, because they're gonna have a future in this.
What do you mean?
I liked that. I think that's probably the topic for the next meeting, but they have a handout of one building option from New City.
I've not seen that. Has anyone seen that?
That's the one that after the last meeting, Janet Skidmore picked up and she ran around and showing it to everybody, saying it must have fallen out of David's pile. And I'm thinking, just give it back to David. So some New City document, we don't know really what it means or its implications in our process right now.
All
But I
right,
think
well, there's just a few of us, and I, at the risk of saying something I shouldn't say, having learned something I didn't expect to learn, or no one planned for me to learn. I went to the renters meeting, and I heard Tyler talk about what would happen if New City were the manager of the building instead of Walker, and it was all good stuff. So it really relaxed me in the building thing. I've been so rigid about we have to keep the building, but you know, we can pass it on to a younger generation.
I thought they'd already turned that down.
No.
Oh, no.
That's
Oh,
good news, Casey. Thank you.
I think that's good news. Yeah, I didn't know about anybody turning anything down.
No,
This-
I
this
think
is-
at one point they weren't ready, but obviously they've done some processing.
Right, right,
Hey, we're not ready either.
right.
So
Right.
anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing whatever that handout is.
Yeah, officially seeing it versus
Yes, yes. Oh,
Right.
I haven't seen the handout. I just heard
gossipy.
Tyler talk to our renters, and
Yeah,
it was a very good meeting.
Excellent. Good job, lady.
It was one of the, I was just pulling up the handouts for this meeting, and there was one in there from New City, I think. So it's in the list of one of the 2 pages of handouts that were sent out today.
Okay, I couldn't find that. It was that on, a link?
After the agenda, there were a couple of handouts. It's in there
Oh.
somewhere.
Okay, so that was on an email?
Yeah.
Let me go look. All right, thank you.
It was there was like session 4 materials, August 14th, agenda, feedback, building options, and then there was a new city proposal.
Here I go.
Okay.
I'll be here, I'll be listening, but I'll be also searching my computer.
yeah. We'll all get ready for it.
Yeah, it may not be all stuff that we're discussing this time, but it's probably for us to have to look over. So. At least that's the sense I got from David, that we weren't discussing building exactly this time. So,
Well, right, but
Next time is
I saw
building.
something that indicated that there was going to be a handout, but I didn't see the handout. So here I am, still looking for it.
Oh, the meeting is starting with, or there's.
Oh, okay, that's
in
all
this-
right. I don't need to do that now.
Testing.
Testing. Yeah, it works.
Several tables have told me they have solved all the problems and everything's going to be fine after they make their
Right.
reports. So that's what I heard from the table. So let's.
Casey, why don't you be our reporter?
Which table would like me to bring the microphone over? Okay, I'm coming over to see you. Here you are. Fill us in.
Okay.
Pull your mask off if you would, because it's easier to hear.
What was helpful, that we all got to speak and ask questions, that there was clarity about the process. We have a very good leader, thank you very much. And what were our suggestions to improve? Keep on going with keeping good boundaries, and also keep trying to clarify the facts as best we can. And what have you learned? That we've got many strong lay leaders, and we like the use of the covenant, which is like a parameter or a constitution, which was really helpful. And what other questions or thoughts do you have here? We had some conflict. Mr. Cobian said that we should move towards balance towards spiritual pursuit, away from realistic financial. And I said we should do it the other way around. And this was a conflict, but we're going to take anger management. So,
And what I.
Yeah. Is that
That
comfortable?
works, yeah. It's like,
I was going to say, this was a comedy routine over here with this table. Obviously, you enjoyed each other. This table ready to report? Somebody? I'll hand you the microphone and you can figure it out.
Well, we didn't go through these 4 as we were supposed to, but we ended up talking quite a bit about the building in anticipation of this coming week's gathering.
No, guys, you have to be quiet so we can all hear this, please.
And so we talked about that as something that we're all concerned about, and that's on our minds as we anticipate this coming week's meeting. And the fact that money is a factor, even though, I mean, the opposite of what Steve was saying, yes, spirituality is wonderful, but when the rent is due, the rent is due, and various other versions of that. There was some talk about being linked so closely with the Methodist Church. That wasn't quite the right wording. Following the Methodist structure as much as we are, it wasn't necessarily negative, but that it was a factor. Are there other things I need to say?
I am disappointed that more people haven't been showing up for these meetings, because this is the future of our community.
I'll
You
echo
can bring a
Nancy's
horse
words.
to water, but you can't make him drink.
We've had better turnouts when we've had votes. So I'm anticipating a pretty strong turnout with the decision on the building coming up on Wednesday. Your table, I noticed you were joined by a third person there.
Yeah, I don't know if we got anything out of Henry. We were talking so much, I'm afraid. We didn't hear, and he filled out his form online, so we didn't get that either. But what I wanted to mention, the main thing that I've been thinking, the main thing that I've been thinking lately is this, what always happens to me is, this is the whole process is put together, without our input. This is coming down from the conference, and so we are asked to vote on these different options without being able to talk about everything that is on our hearts and in our minds. For what I would like to say is that there are creative ideas that I and others have had over the years, which we never have an opportunity to discuss in the entire community, not just at a table with a few people. And the reason we can't do that is because it doesn't fit in this process. So that's my critique. I'd say I haven't learned anything new about the community. I've been concerned about the conflict on occasion during this whole process, but ultimately feels about the same. Let's see. Yeah, anyway, that's what I had to say, and Lou had various concerns that apparently we have not been able to address in these meetings too.
I want to find out what these concerns are. Yeah. The reason we're doing this is so that we get stuff in writing so we can share that with the congregation. I do want to say this actually didn't come down from the conference. The concept behind this particular thing was worked on by Tyler, and he presented a piece to me that I took and changed. And I'm not the disciple of the conference, even though I'm a member of the conference. I didn't, And so there is continuing conversations that are going on with Henry, Tyler, myself, and occasionally we bring Dan in because we have questions about things that we want to make sure we're doing it right. But this was not locked down that way. These conversations began last December. You went through a whole process then, and then they tried to find somebody. The person wasn't available.
All I'm saying is this differs a lot from the process that I would envision, which would be everybody who's part of the community, who feels part of the community, comes in. We're in a circle. We pass a talking stick, and we talk about these things until we reach some kind of resolution. And so this differs a lot from that process. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to fight about it because I don't.
Okay. Well, this is why we're doing this, so that we have all of that information together for everybody to share. And if this whole thing has been able to change and modify as we go along, and that's the only way a good, open, transparent process is, that you get feedback and you continue to use it, and that's what we want to do. So you're thinking we need to add a whole nother session? No?
Feel that I don't just exactly feel that it's totally transparent. No. I mean, it just.
What part isn't transparent?
It's okay. I don't have to be holding it.
Last Sunday, we had 52 people here. Today, we have 25. Last week was a potluck. This week was a mini potluck, but really, Cade brought the food. So half of us aren't here on a regular Sunday because we're tired of this. It's somehow it's missing how we feel. I don't know.
People got their hands raised over here.
I just want to embrace the process, which is what it is today, and it's part of this pandemic world we've evolved into, where some of these things in the past where we could get all the community and all the people involved, that was yesterday. Today we're in a different world, and this is what it is, and I'm just embracing what it is, and I appreciate the leadership and how they're making a real strong effort to make it transparent.
Just putting this here because I don't know where else to put it. This. Yeah, hook it to a pillow. That was a good comment.
I want to affirm the. No. I think that there's been I've had a great frustration in this process because there isn't really ways for people to say what I feel like I have a lot of stuff to say and I haven't really had an opportunity to say it. I don't know why that is, but there are tons of reasons why that is, but I think what Mary was saying about the talking circle really resonated with me. That we have this process where most of the talk has been about the process, and I don't think we've had that much talk about. I don't think we know very much about what our real options are, about what the real situation is. We don't really understand who owns the building. And
what the hell is he talking about?
And there's a whole other side. Okay, there's a whole other side of me, which is going along and saying, well, the process is good. There's a lot of good comes from this process. We all get to hear each other to some extent. And part of me has been going along saying, well, trust the process, because I always think these big meetings are ridiculous, but they work somehow. So my I don't know where that goes, but I do think that and I'm complaining about how we don't have any information, and I'm a person who is as responsible as anyone for getting out information. And so I'm very frustrated with the process, but on the other hand, I'll defend the process if you.
So I want to hear exactly what you don't like about the process. What we've been doing. Let me just. Oh, somebody's got a nice phone there.
Little
Let me just-
irritation there?
There's three decision points we have. One has to do.
I think it could be.
Okay. So, there are three decision points that I was asked to help facilitate. The first was whether the church remain a church, become a fellowship, disband, or disaffiliate and go to another denomination. We had presentation on that, we had discussion, there was a vote, you decided to stay at church, and very strong second was fellowship, very close. That was one decision point. I don't think there was anything not clear about that, and the decision was pretty, came down. The second was to figure out what kind of leadership the church would need to go from where it is to where it will be. There was a decision on that. Next Wednesday, we'll be talking about the building and what are the options for the building. We've got stuff we'll be handing out to you, and you'll be seeing it shortly. So that was another piece. Does it solve everything? No. It's going to take it's going to take a year to 2 years to figure all the details out. It's not going to all come wrapped up, and whether we need to have talking, that's a great idea. I know you've done that before. That was part of your process earlier. These are all things that can be done. The important thing is that we're communicating with the congregation. The important thing is we're having these meetings. We did have 30 people in worship on today, by the way. I counted them, and it wasn't just a clergy count. It was an accurate one. And then we had people online. So was it large? No, but we're also at the height of people taking vacations, too. That's the other thing that's going on. So we're doing the best we know how to do. We're allowing you to help steer it, to make decisions, not to make decisions, give input, make suggestions. The important thing is to do the work. Because this congregation has been floundering for quite a long time. And I don't think you can afford to flounder much longer, frankly. And that's my perspective from the outside. This is a great place. I love it.
Don't do it.
And you've got too much potential
Okay, shut up.
to let it go away. Now, you had your hand up.
Oops.
Sorry,
I'm just
that was a little
talking to David.
preaching from the sidelines.
So don't do what?
Well, I guess I'm kind of shocked, both by, quite honestly, all that Mary has said and all that Howard has said. I've been very hopeful about this. It kind of feels like came out of the blue. I was so hopeful that things were going along well. The idea of calling a meeting of everybody sitting around in a circle and going around one by one, it sounds like hell. It sounds like hell to me. And we know that certain people are going to dominate it and keep going on and on, round and round and round until they feel like.
No, I'm gonna do this, guys. You remember what we said to each other at the very beginning? That we were going to have fun. There was going to be love. There was going to be kindness. Those are commitments we made to each other. No, seriously, we did. So that's all right. So let's not. There is a tendency. I'll have to say it. I've seen this congregation. People like to go after each other. I don't get it. I just want
to say,
yeah.
I really appreciated what Howard said too, because that he put his finger on it exactly. It's like, this is not the first process that Walker has had like this, but at every one that I've been at, there's always an agenda made up by somebody else, and you have to go through these. What are your favorite things about Walker? What are your least favorite things? Where do you want to be in 5 years? These questions you always have to ask, and you have to get in a little group and answer them. This does not address the creative ideas that I have. Never does. There's never time for that. We can never discuss the pros and cons. And I do not have any interest in being a sole leader of a congregation, because then you are the sole sitting duck for what everybody doesn't like. What I want is other people who will agree to work on something that we all agree on. Now, we are coming up here with the idea of having an interim minister. This wasn't the idea that I would have thought of myself, but, you know, the thing is, when you're given these things to vote on, like when the first time we were going to vote, the reason I voted for having an ordained clergy person was because I understood that we had to stay, or the reason I voted to remain a UMC church, because I understood that we had to pay off this debt, and the only way we could do that would be to sell this building so that we could pay off that debt, and we can't sell the building if we're a fellowship. Okay, so this was the reason for my vote, which wasn't a reason that had anything to do with what I would really like to do. So this is what I'm saying. There was not enough time. We didn't have enough information.
Yeah, I want you to know that we're 10 minutes to 2, and it's really important that we hear all of these perspectives. And yep.
Yeah, thank you. You know, okay, I'll take my mask off. And my mask is off. Yeah, no, I think our table has a lot of the same concerns, and you know, I personally don't wish to make you feel defensive, David, and I think you are reacting a little bit that way, but yeah, it's just frustrating, and I think people are expressing their frustration that we, you know, have to you know, use this format, and it's, you know, it's just inadequate, and it's no one's fault. And I personally am trying to keep as an article of faith that we will learn things at each one of these sessions, and I think we have, and that we will be able to assemble things holistically, and that we should look at the charge conference not as a rubber stamp for these things, but as a point that we will arrive at where we'll have some more information, and we can continue to you know, look at all of our options. Because you know, like, what's our mission as a congregation? You know, usually that would be kind of the leading thing. You know, well, we haven't really been able to talk about that or come up with it or whatever. So, and of course the financial affects all of this stuff. So for me, it's been frustrating, but I don't blame anyone, and I think that we will, if we, you know, look at it as a very frustrating process that's proceeding, that, you know, each time we'll find out a little more about what the true story is. But so, you know, for what has been helpful about this sermon process, I put that it started because it was so frustrating to go from Katie's resignation all the way until this point and not be able to start this process. So that's just, again, an expression of my frustration, and I don't mean to, you know, I'm on the board too, and I think despite all of our efforts, we're frustrated, but we're moving forward. So I guess that's my message.
We hadn't elected which one of us was going to speak, so Steve said, let's just do a quick little popcorn. So I'm just going to add a little 2 cents here. Steve did bring up the question at the final vote in the charge conference. is there a possibility of saying, our group, our whole community here saying, we don't feel ready for this vote? So that was a question that came to us. The one other thing is I do think that it's important to just notice, I personally feel fear right now, and I feel there's a lot of grief in this community post-COVID. I don't think we're alone in that. I think that we are very raw. I can't only speak for myself, so I feel raw, and my guess is others do in some form amount. And doing this process, I do not have an answer of why it has to be the time frame that it is. I haven't heard that, and I also haven't heard why now, as the summertime, as it was pointed out, people are on vacation. So I have a lot of questions about, why now, why this time frame, the duration of time that we are taking for this process. And then I personally would not find it to be hellish to sit in a circle listening to this congregation. I think I would like that. I would like that, and I don't want, there's no chuckles needed. I have no need for chuckles. I feel I'm annoyed by chuckles right now. So.
There's another. Zoom, we got something from Zoom? Yeah.
The microphone.
What do you tell me?
Hello, Zoom crowd. I don't know if you can hear me right now, but whoever is sharing can go ahead and unmute and speak, and you'll be piped into the speakers here.
Casey.
Oh, really?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to be the one.
You're on.
But so let's do popcorn. I'm going to say that, however flawed the process may have been, any process would have been very difficult. And I think we are moving forward, and that we're getting our ideas out there. And this is a good thing. What had other people said? Diane and Mary.
I think that this process is very short and feels abrupt, but I think it's been a long time coming. So I don't question the timing on that. It's just condensed, and that's very intense. I think that I'm very inspired by Mary's idea of processing, and I think that could be done, incorporated in future things that we're doing after we do some of this basic, brick and mortar and personnel stuff. Because this is doing the circle thing with a person who knows how to do that. I've done that before, and it can be very wonderful and creative. But we have more things to process in the future, so I look forward to that. The only thing I would suggest that maybe be done differently, and David finally clarified that when we were doing the voting, that we were voting for things we would prefer, things that we would like to see in the future. We don't need to analyze the financials for that at this point. That's not what this point was about. And I think I was fixed on financial stuff, but instead of going from a point of scarcity, we just were asked to dive into a point of abundance, and then we will align it with what we are able to do at this time. And that's what will take 1, 2, whatever years to accomplish.
And I just want to add one more thing about the timing of this, and I appreciate the comment about summer vacations. For those of us who've been traveling, and I'm just coming back from South Dakota, so I opted to do Zoom today for safety reasons, just to be on the safe side. But I appreciate the fact that the Zoom has been available and that we've made it a part to include that in our community. I think is valuable, and yes, I'd like to be there in person, but for those who can't, for whatever reason, I appreciate that there's been the interdialogue between the two groups and that it's been encouraged. The only other thing I'd like to see is, I would have liked to have seen is a little bit longer time on the voting, just so that people could have a little longer time to weigh in and have those votes counted. So they could process information and really think.
All right, thank you.
Really nice to have people online being able to communicate out loud so we can all hear them too. Thank you for making that happen, Henry. This will have to be a very brief piece, but I'll give it to you.
Well, it is, and I don't want you to say I'm getting ahead of the ball here, but your next, this preparing for the meeting 5 on building, is the handout for the new city church proposal going to be available before the meeting? Are we going to be able to?
I'm handing it out.
That is pertinent.
It's coming out to you now, and it'll be also available online to the people who are online. So, gosh, how did we fill those 90 minutes up so fast? All right, it was only 83 minutes because we started a few minutes late. I think we got an awful lot of good stuff. Yes, you can collect those, that's fine. I think we got a lot of good information out, and I think we have a couple of ideas that I think are worthy of incorporating in whatever the next steps are after we finish this particular process. Because I think it's important that we honor the traditions and the suggestions of community members. That's vital. I'm going to just send us out with a blessing, and I will have the forms up here, and we'll get those out to people too. We'll meet you at the door. I'll take one pile, and Mary, you want to take another pile? Here's one, and I'll do the other one. So, friends, thank you. The most important thing is that you took time to make a difference. And you shared honestly and clearly, and you're helping the process become better. You do continuous quality improvement. You keep listening, you keep learning, and you keep offering what you learned, and that's important. And now as we go forth from this time, let us go forth in knowledge of the one who loves and cares for us. Let us go forth as a community of faith. Let us go forth as those who are bringing hope to the hopeless, helping to feed the hungry, helping to nourish those who need to be nourished. May you go forth in the peace of the one who loves us. Amen.
Bye, Benita.
Hi, good to see you both.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Big hugs.
Yes, you
Thank
too.
you. I look forward to being in your garden soon.
Okay.
Both of you. Thank you, Henry.